So welcome, our remarkable and beloved colleague John. We so appreciate your consistent leadership and solidarity. And as always at SETC, we begin all things by giving thanks to our Creator, by acknowledging and giving thanks to all the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So that being said, John, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work?
Well, thank you very much, Victor. It is really, really wonderful to be here. And I'm joining you this morning from Vancouver, from the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh peoples. And as you said, we give thanks to those who've allowed us to live, work, and play on this land that they've stewarded for many, many millennia. And I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to you today. So a little bit about me. I am the CEO of Realize Strategies Cooperative, which is a social enterprise consultancy based in Vancouver that works primarily with nonprofits, social enterprises, and cooperative social economy organizations across the country to help improve their ability to thrive. Pardon me, in ever-changing and sometimes very difficult worlds. I've been fortunate to be the CEO of Realize now for 12 years, which is a long time, and I've seen a lot of changes in that. And I've had a lot of very interesting things that have happened to me in that journey. One that I'm particularly excited about, Victor, and it's something that I think you and I are both passionate about, is having been one of the founders of Bisocial Canada with our dear friend David LePage. And that was, in some respects, born out of the years I spent. I was very fortunate earlier in my life to be on the board of Fair Trade Canada and Fair Trade International for a number of years. And, you know, that's a global organization that supports producers in the global south, in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America to have better access for their cooperatives to markets in the north. So I'm very passionate about that ability to give a better opportunity for people who are often marginalized in the economy to have fair access and a better shake in building for their families and their communities. And that's always been a passion for me. And today I'm very, very humbled to now be in my 5th year as the chair of the board of Cooperatives and Mutuals Canada, which the national organization for cooperatives across Canada, from the very large to the very small. So that's something that, again, gives me the good opportunity, the good fortune to be able to work not just with cooperators across Canada, but also to be able to interact with cooperators from around the world. And that work to me is very exciting and very inspiring. And I'm just delighted that I get to play a small part in our collective work to build a better economy where there is no such thing as marginalization, where everybody has an equal opportunity to build their communities, to support their families, and to feel fully engaged in everything that they do.
That's absolutely remarkable, sir. My goodness, such a body of work. David LePage is one of my favorite people. And I've worked closely with Bisocial Canada for a long time. And I did not know that you were the board chair of CMC. Daniel Burnett is one of my close colleagues as well. So I think and did not know about your work with Fair Trade Canada as well. So once again, I'm usually very prepared for these conversations. I Realize Strategies. I wasn't aware of your extensive body of work. It's absolutely tremendous. Congratulations. Yeah. So my next
thank you, Victor.
So my next question is, what's inspiring you right now? What has you curious, or what's keeping you up at nights?
Oh, wow, there's quite a question, Victor. I guess what's keeping me up at night, honestly, is we seem to be, at least in my part of the country, in some tougher economic times right now. I'm seeing a lot of organizations, both private sector companies, social economy organizations like mine, who are feeling a very different economy right now for reasons that no one really understands. But we all feel it. And I've been talking to some cooperatives over the course of this week who are telling me the same thing, that they're having to hunker down and figure out how to survive, and asking for advice and help to get there. So that's the thing that's keeping me awake at night, Victor. What's exciting me is, I think, what I continue to see in the growth of interest in the social economy and more companies that are making the journey to be purpose-based. We have the B Corp Global Champions retreat coming up in a couple weeks here in Vancouver, which I'm really looking forward to because, again, we've been part of that movement now for, I think, 9 or almost 10 years. We've been a certified B Corp. And just so seeing that it's becoming more and more of a reality. Even last night in the State of the Union address, President Biden talked about it's time to increase taxes on billionaires and the very wealthy. And it was interesting to hear that some Republicans even agreed with him, because to me that starts to say people are understanding that we have got to change the fundamental economic circumstances that we live in. We can't have a society where there are some very, very, very wealthy people who have more money than 99 or more than 99% of the rest of us. It just doesn't make sense. So that's something that I'm excited about. I'm excited to see that more people want to be living in a world where purpose is the thing that, and a purpose that's not just about profit making, is core to what we need to do in building our communities.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I had a great conversation with one of my colleagues on Bill Young yesterday, and the whole thing was around just a widening gap in wealth inequality. And there's so many ways that we can go about from a public policy stance, as you mentioned, the State of the Union address, regulatory frameworks, or even just the actors in the state, stakeholders, institutional investors, like pension funds. Like there's so many folks that could actually make things better for those on the margins, the periphery of the economy. But once again, it takes will, it takes skill. But where there's a will is a way. And I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm an optimist by nature because I have 4 children. So by default, I'm I have quite a few grandchildren. So the world has to get better. And I'm gonna do my darndest to see that happen. So my next question: what challenges and barriers are you facing in your work, and how are you and your team working to overcome these challenges and barriers?
Again, great question, Victor. And I touched on my earlier answer. Right now, we are really grappling with an economic environment that is different than I've seen in my 12 years stewarding realized strategies. We're a business because much of what we do is consulting work. It's demand driven. It's hard to predict. And in the last number of months, we've seen a real change from what we normally experience. And it has meant that we've had to make some, unfortunately, very difficult decisions to reduce our costs. So my colleagues and I are trying to understand how we can continue to thrive while we work our way through these challenges, and hopefully come out stronger in the end. At the same time, we are in the very early phases of piloting some new things, or starting to think about some new directions for our organization. One of which is looking much more into social impact investment. And partly because we've had a very long-standing and very successful partnership with Van City that has provided us great support for our members, and money that assists us in doing our work. So now we're looking at maybe we can use some of that to do good work in the community. But at the same time, we are a member-based organization, and we're also looking at some of the challenges that our members are facing. Many of them are funded by governments and donors, and they're having some challenging times. So we're really trying to figure out what can we do, albeit as a relatively small organization, but one with, I think, a fairly well-known footprint in B.
So how do you feel about the future of social impact in Canada? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Are you hopeful? How are you feeling?
I'm like you, Victor. I'm hopeful and optimistic by nature. So I am hopeful about the landscape, but I think there's a lot of hard work to do too, because I look at where traditional capital is still at. VCs, angel investors, private investors. We hear a lot of talk about impact, but when you strip away all the nice stuff that you hear and you get down to what are you actually doing, it still looks pretty traditional to me. It's still, impact is really, can you deliver a 10x return on the exit of your business? And we expect you to sell your business, by the way. Not to the kind of, not necessarily in the way that John Shell and his colleagues at Social Capital Partners are talking about, sell it to but sell it to the market, somebody who's going to pay a lot of money. I'm optimistic that we can break through that mentality. We can shift more and more capital towards being patient, towards investing in communities, towards really, really putting impact forward, and not in a kind of token performative way, but really in the DNA of what you're trying to do. It's not just about making a 10x return, it's about maybe 5 or 4 times return, but what you're going to get in exchange is some real difference in the community. And that's, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic, Victor. I'm hopeful. I may be Pollyannish about it, but you know, if you don't feel optimistic, and then where are you? It makes life pretty unpleasant to live that way.
I couldn't agree more. One of my colleagues, Jean-Marc from PFC, he just said something that's so insightful. He said, "We can't afford the luxury of despair in these times," and I can't
That's right.
agree more. Like, we can't afford that luxury at all. So my last question, and this is important to me. Like, what is your ultimate goal, and what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues? And do you have any calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
For me, success in a macro picture looks like the hard work that you do, that we do, that BiSocial does. Sometimes it feels like it's still in the niche, and my hope is that it becomes more and more the mainstream. You know, same with in my fair trade days, we'd talk about, if you took the mark off, would people really care? Well, I hope that they do care about buying differently, using the money to influence positive change. And if we can see more and more of that, then I think we can all we can all go away happy when eventually we retire. And for my team, Victor, I think we really want to get through this patch of challenge that we're going through right now, and really lean into how we can, as a small team, how we can make a difference in the work that we do directly, in the work that we do with partners and allies like SETC and SEDNet and BiSocial Canada and all the other good organizations that across the country that share a collective vision of a fairer, a more just, a more equitable, a more inclusive society.
That's remarkable, and I couldn't agree more, sir. Thank you so much for all those actionable insights, all those jewels, all the wisdom, and the remarkable work that you've been doing for quite some time. You work diligently on behalf of many communities, and you're truly an inspiration to folks coming up, trying their best to ensure that we live in a more equitable society. So once again, I appreciate all that you do for so many. And as always at SETC, we close this interview, this conversation, the way it began, by giving thanks to our creator, acknowledging, giving thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. John, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Victor. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you today.